history, Theodore Roosevelt is the youngest man ever to be President of the United States. He was 42 years old when he assumed the oath of office. Who's the youngest man ever to be elected President of the United States? John F. Kennedy. Yep. Yes?
Were there any presidents that were shot that didn't die?
Reagan. Yep, Reagan about died. Now, I'm going to tell you a quick story, which is, it kind of does. So, this girl right here, one of my former students, one of my favorite kiddos of all time, her name is Lieutenant Colonel Kristen Wood. She is a Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Air Force. She has her own command in Florida. She was stationed in Washington, D.C. for several years, and every time I take the kids there, we'd take her out with us and eat. Just wonderful young lady. I mean, she is salty, okay? Has not been married. Her career is more important at this time. Gee whiz. She is probably right now, she's got to be close to 40, I would guess, okay? Because I went there about 5 years ago. I went there, and this is kind of a touching story. So I have really not a lot of idea what Kristen's doing. I know she's in the Air Force, and I know she's doing well. So we're in the Pentagon, okay? And Mrs. Bilodeau's in the front of the line, and I'm in the back of the line, and we got kids in between, right? And they're giving us this tour of the Pentagon. And all of a sudden, I feel this tap on my shoulder, and I turn around, and it's Kristen. And I have not seen the girl since high school, for sure. And I just can't believe it, that she's stationed in the Pentagon. It was just kind of an emotional moment. It was really kind of a cool deal. Well, ever since then, she was stationed in D.C. We would always, invite her to supper and have quite a time. And it just makes you proud, when your kids are like that. But anyway, so we went to a Washington Nationals baseball game. This is quite a story. And we were sitting there talking, and I always wanted one of these jerseys with your name on the back, right? But they're horribly expensive. They're like $150, right? Well, I go down to the store. The kids are there, and she's there. And if you buy a red one, they had them on sale. They were like $55 with your name on it. So I went ahead and had one made. And I went back to my seat because they were making it. It takes a while. And I talked to her, Chris, and I said, geez, what do you think these people have these jerseys? What do you think of this? Because she's a big fan of the Nationals, because she had been there for like 5 years. She goes, oh God, I've always wanted one of those, but I'm just not going to pay that much money for them. And I said, oh really? I said, if you got one, what would you want to put on it? She goes, I'd want to put my favorite president on it, Theodore Roosevelt. So I'd want to put Roosevelt and 16, because he was the 16th president. Now bear with me here, okay? Anyway, so I'm pretty sneaky, now bear with me. So I go back down there, and they don't have any more red jerseys left, but they have white. No, I gotta back up. They have red jerseys, but the letters that go on the back that match the white letters, they are missing some of Roosevelt. I can't remember which one. So they said, well, we can sell you a white one, but it's $150. I said, are you out of your mind? I'm not paying $150 for that. I said, so anyway, you know me. So anyway, I get to going, and I get to thinking to myself, Roosevelt's not the 16th president, he's the 26th president. And so I'm thinking what she said, so I override her, and I say, I want Roosevelt on it, 26, okay? So I go back and don't say much and leave mine there. So I come back after that, and I'm wearing mine. I'm all pretty proud of mine. She goes, oh, geez, I'd really like to have one. So I said, well, maybe someday I'll get one. So anyway, we have another 7th inning stretch or whatever, and I go back, and I get her jersey, and I bring it back and give it to her. She's just emotional about it. And I said, by the way, I said, do you realize that Roosevelt was the 26th president? She goes, oh my God. She looked at me, she goes, who was my U.S. history teacher? Anyway, here's a picture. This is a great picture of her and I after the game, and her in her little Roosevelt jersey, and mine in my little jersey. And anyway, it was kind of a touching thing. It's kind of a cool story, and every time I think of Theodore Roosevelt, I always think of Kristen Wood and her thinking that he was the 16th president of the United States. He is not, he's the 26th. Okay? Anyway, all right, moving on. Good little story there. She'd be proud. Maybe she'll watch it on the video tonight. Okay, we are going to now get into, for a few minutes, a profile on Theodore Roosevelt, and it's quite long. It's about 13 pages of my notes. So a majority of your test is going to come off of this Theodore Roosevelt profile. So make sure you're taking very good notes here. I think this is a guy you need to know. Everybody's heard of Theodore Roosevelt, right? I'm going to tell you quite a bit of things about him. So we'll start on this today. Anybody know where Theodore Roosevelt was born? Unlike most others, where? No? Farthest thing from that as you can imagine. Where was he born?
California.
No, east. Close.
Kentucky.
Higher.
Carolina.
North Carolina.
North of Virginia.
I said Virginia.
North of West Virginia.
Illinois.
Pennsylvania. Tennessee.
He was born in New York City.
I said New York.
Oh, did you? Okay, New York City on October 27th of 1858. Theodore Roosevelt was born in New York City on October 27th of 1858. October 27th, 1858 in New York City. He was the second of 4 children born to Theodore and Martha Roosevelt, which tells you that he is what? A junior, okay? So he was the second of 4 children born to Theodore and Martha Roosevelt, telling you that he's Theodore Jr. His father's occupation was that of a glass importer, which made him rich, poor, glass, rich, yeah. People are paying a lot of money for imported glass. It's a very well-to-do family. Theodore Roosevelt isn't like Abraham Lincoln was born in a log cabin. This guy was born into money, okay? His dad was a glass importer, and the family was considered very well-to-do. Now, when he was a little kid, he was well known for his great energy and his great curiosity and his great determination, but he was a little bit of a wimp as a youngster. He had asthma. He was very nearsighted, which meant he wore glasses at a very, very early age. And he kind of had that look of a wimp, to be honest with you. Okay, he wasn't very tough, okay? He had great energy, he had great curiosity, he had great determination, but he suffered from asthma, was very nearsighted. He had the look of a what? Wimp or a nerd, kind of, okay? Well, guess what happened throughout his younger years? He was bullied and he was tormented. Okay? Well, finally, when he was 13 years old, a couple of boys were tormenting him, or I guess in today's terms, bullying him. And he became very ashamed and he lost a lot of self-esteem because he was not strong enough to fight back. Even though he would like to have just punched those 2 guys in the nose, he knew he couldn't do it. He was going to end up on the bad end of the stick because he was just kind of a wimpy little guy. And he went home and told his father about the incident. And his father decided it was time to toughen him up. So he built him a gymnasium in the family home. And that gymnasium isn't what you know of today. What was a gymnasium in those days? Not a basketball
Weight room.
It was a weight room and a workout place and, you know, jumping rope. And a gymnasium in those days was like a health club kind of, okay? So his father was tired of this, and so he built him a gymnasium right in the family home. And he worked, and he worked, and he worked, and because of his hard work, he not only overcame asthma, but he built up what was considered kind of an unusual physical strength. As an adult, you think about it, he was 5'9", 220 pounds, and he wasn't fat. So he's about this tall and 220. I weigh 220 and I'm this tall. So he was 5'9", 220 when he was an adult. So his father decided, you know what? This kid's going to get over this asthma. He's going to start working out. I'm going to put him in a gymnasium right in the house. And he did work incredibly hard. And by the time he was an adult, he was 5'9", 220 pounds. That's a short, stocky dude. Okay? Well, he went to elementary school and high school. He graduated from high school, and he entered Harvard University. He was very bright. And he entered Harvard in 1876. He was just 18 years old when he went into Harvard. So after his high school years, he entered Harvard University in 1876. He was just 18 years old. Yep. Now in 1879, prior to him graduating from Harvard, he met Alice Lee. And Alice Lee was a daughter of a very wealthy Bostonian who had his own investment firm, so he was eventually going to marry into more money. Okay? So again, in 1879, just before he graduates from Harvard, he meets a young lady by the name of Alice Lee, and she is the daughter of a very wealthy Bostonian who owned his own investment firm. Yeah.
So he went into Harvard when McKinley entered the White House.
That's probably right, yeah. Oh, we'll talk about that in a minute, okay? Now, they married a year later on Theodore's 22nd birthday. So they met in 1879, and 1 year later they married on Theodore's 22nd birthday, which means, if you look at our notes, they were married on October 27th. Okay? Now, this is kind of interesting. After he graduated from Harvard in 1880, he really didn't know what he wanted to do with his life. You'd think if you graduated and got a Harvard University degree, you'd have your stuff figured out. He really didn't. And he decided to go to Columbia University Law School. He wanted to maybe become a lawyer, but he didn't like the courses, and he simply walked away. So he graduates from Harvard in 1880. He's not really sure what he wants to be when he grows up. He decides finally that he might want to be a lawyer, so he enrolls at Columbia University Law School. Courses don't suit him. He really doesn't like them. And so he decided to join the Republican Party. And he becomes a member of the New York State Legislature. Who's in the Wyoming State Legislature? Mike Greer. Okay, so he was kind of a Mike Greer. So he graduates from Harvard, he goes, back home, so to speak, and he serves in the New York State Legislature. And everything's going pretty good with him until February 14th, 1884. Valentine's Day, thank you very much. Valentine's Day. Everything's going really well for the guy until February 14th, 1884. What happens to him? His wife dies of kidney failure 2 days after giving birth to a daughter. So all of a sudden this guy is a single dad with a 2-day-old child. Okay, on Valentine's Day of all days. So his wife dies of kidney failure 2 days after giving birth to their little girl. And she dies on Valentine's Day. Now that's bad, isn't it? So who might you turn to help you with that child? Your mother. Unfortunately, his mother died on the same day of typhoid fever. So he lost his wife and his mother on the same day, Valentine's Day of 1884. Typhoid fever. They died in the same house, hours apart. How about that for a bad day for him? Okay? So his life continued on course until February 14th of 1884, when his wife died of kidney failure 2 days after giving birth to a daughter. Hours later, his mother dies in the same house of typhoid fever. That is sad. What might you do under those circumstances?
Correct. I do a lot of that.
Well, not that crazy, but what might you think? What might you do? Might say, I got to get the hell out of here for a while. So what did he do? He gave his daughter to his sister and headed out to the American West. He just had to get out of the East. So after the death of his wife and his mother, he leaves his daughter Alice in the care of his sister. Alice, his daughter Alice. What was his wife's name? I wonder how that happened. named the daughter after the wife when she died. Left the daughter Alice with his sister and headed out to the western frontier. You know what he did out there? What did he do out there, Brady?
So gamble.
Went to work. Where did he go to work on?
Oh.
He went and ran 2 different cattle ranches on the Missouri River in the Dakota Territory. Here's a guy who has a Harvard degree, faced tremendous tragedy, goes out west, and he decides to run 2 different cattle ranches on the Missouri River in the Dakota Territory. You know what else he took up while he was out there running cattle ranches? He became an avid writer, and he published 2 books. I have them both, by the way, back in that sacred cabinet back there by Dylan. One of them, you don't really write this down, one of them, the first one you don't, one of them was a biography of Senator Thomas Hart Benton, which was a famous politician. He wrote a biography, which I have back there. And he wrote a 4-volume series entitled The Winning of the West. I have all 4 first editions back there. The Winning of the West. So he wrote 2 different books. He wrote a biography on a senator by the name of Thomas Hart Benton, and he also wrote a 4-volume series entitled The Winning of the West. Now, we'll finish with a couple sentences here. On December 2nd of 1886, he returns back east, and what does he do? He does, but what does he do as he does that? He remarries a lady by the name of Edith Carroll, who was a childhood friend, a friend of his when he was just a child. So he remarries, comes back east, and on December 2nd of 1886, he remarries Edith Carroll, who was a childhood friend. And those 2 have 5 children together, along with raising his first daughter, Alice. So they ended up with 6 kids. Edith Carroll and Theodore Roosevelt had 5 children and also raised his daughter, Alice. Then he decides to run for mayor of New York City. And he loses. He's appointed to the Civil Service Commission by President Benjamin Harrison. It's on your ID sheet. The Civil Service Commission by Benjamin Harrison. And after serving in that position under both Harrison and Grover Cleveland, he decided to accept a position on the Board of Police Commissioners in New York City. What's that? He serves as in the Civil Service Commission for both President Benjamin Harrison and President Grover Cleveland. And then he serves for those 2 presidents, and then he accepts the position of Board of Police Commissioners. What would you do if you were on the Board of Police Commissioners in New York City? You would oversee what? Police department. Make sure they were honest and doing what they're supposed to do. Well, he was a really big fan of William McKinley, right? So when McKinley got elected president in 1896, how did McKinley reward Roosevelt? Remember, he made him Assistant Secretary of the Navy, right? And then he put him on the ticket in 1900, and he eventually becomes President of the United States, right? Now, we will finish the profile tomorrow and tell you what he did after he was assumed the president, because you think he might run for his own term? Okay? And some important things happened during his presidency we'll talk about tomorrow. Okay? Perfect. You guys have been a good group. Maybe we'll learn you something. Okay, Brady, my man.